Kaustubha Das here with the big announcement for Wisdom of the Sages listeners. This August will be Ashram month at the Supersoul Farm. Simple ashram living, rising early, morning kirtan, yoga and pranayama, healthy vegan and vegetarian meals, farm seva and being immersed in nature, and then gathering in the evenings for kirtan and readings. Plus, each week we'll have a lead presenter teaching a different facet of the philosophy and lifestyle of Bhakti Yoga. Week number 1 will be the exceptional Bhakti Lata teaching a course called The Beauty of Bhakti, bringing the culture of love and devotion into our lives. Week number 2 is my brother from another mother, Raghunath, teaching Falling in Love with Divinity, the Bhakti Yogi's method for opening the heart. And week number 3 is myself with a course called Following the Path, examining the history and teachings of Bhakti Yoga. You can come for 1, 2, or all 3 weeks, and the pricing is by donation. For more dates and information, go to wisdomofthesages.com/events. Peace.
Live from Supersoul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the farm. Welcome to the 4th of July, first annual Wisdom of the Sages celebration. And it is getting hot, hot, hot. Hot, hot, hot. We are here with a huge group of live and still coming in from all over. We got the Naked Viking here, Chris Pitt, Arna from Oslo, and Patrick Hefferman, the locals, Cyprus, Radhe over there is here. Scotland is here. The country of Scotland has all showed up. And it's just a fun event filled with deep philosophical thought and volleyball. The way
I don't know.
it's to make transcendent and because
them one. You like to
no. Well, no, they can be separate, but they're like people like adventure and people.
I was just saying yesterday after we came back from in the rain, he said whenever you're with Raghunath, it turns into an adventure.
Okay, alrighty.
In
Yeah,
a good way.
okay, that's good. Yes, but you know, people. I think it's the soul's birthright to party, and I feel like we have to fight for our right to party. No, I think it meaning we're meant to have a good time, but sometimes partying, right? We wake up on somebody's front lawn, don't know where we are, who the people in my house are, where did I get here? That was old versions. That was the old version of ourselves. And so we think, oh, maybe I should just never party. No, we should sing and we should dance and we should eat and we should be merry, but in a way that upgrades our life. Get around good quality people. And this is the magic of Bhakti Yoga. It's not like we're sitting silently in loneliness. There's great joy. It's choppy. It's choppy, it says. Is everybody's internet off? Everybody's writing choppy. Maybe we should have everybody turn their cameras off that's listening on Zoom. I'm so sorry. Mara's got to do it. She just like, I'm the boss. I'm in control. You're fired. You're fired. Sorry about that, guys. I'd love to see your smiling faces, but it's over. And so anyway, everyone's coming in here, and John V. Harrison is coming, and we're excited for hours of kirtan. And guess what? Me, the Naked Viking, and Parmananda are going to do Shelter Unplugged reunion tonight. Opening act for John V. Harrison.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah, so we're quite excited. I am too.
You ready? We got questions, right?
We got questions, live questions from some of our live people. Raise your hand if you've got a question. Okay, Patrick Hefferman, you're first.
Now you vetted these questions, Raghunath?
No.
I was gonna say if you did, I don't know if it really qualifies in my book as being vetted, but let's see.
Okay, stand behind us, between us, and you hold the mic. This is Patrick Hefferman. He's a local.
Very well. Okay, my question has 2 parts. I was exposed to Bhakti about 10 years ago when I was practicing yoga with Paramananda and Raghunath. No doubt the path has touched my heart and deepened my understanding about how I think of my existence, but I still consider myself a devotee by association. Recently, I was driving away from Supersoul Farm and a very clear and lucid thought came into my mind. I feel as though I'm the best version of myself when I'm here, when I'm in the company of devotees, chanting Krishna's names, hearing Bhagavatam. Here are my questions. First, why am I not always this version of myself? When I'm back home, I fall into old habits and other versions of myself that are less sattvic. The second part of my question is regarding next level commitment to this path. Almost like with a lover, I feel as though Krishna is waiting for me to make the next move. Sometimes, and especially when we're with devotees, I wonder, what am I waiting for? I get in, like we should just elope or something. I drop everything, join an ashram, live as a brahmachari. But is this overzealous? What next steps do you recommend I take to deepen my devotion?
Great question. Great question. Woo.
Good question. Good question.
Hey, are we still choppy there? Put on the board if we're still choppy, people. Mara's got something to say here.
Mara, what do you got to say?
Yeah, it's mostly better.
Mostly better. All right. We'll take
Yeah,
that.
it's a little bit choppy, but not as bad.
That was a great question, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Great. Two questions, yeah.
Okay, Kaustubha, why don't you take it first? You're smarter than me.
No. But to the first question, I think I'll have to look this way. But to the first question, which had to do with I'm the best version of myself when I'm with these deeply spiritual people, but then when I'm not with them, things seem to change. I guess that is just a principle going way back to like commentaries on the Yoga Sutra. I mean, it's certainly like a really important principle in bhakti, who you associate with. But like even like looking at it from a more purely yogic perspective, I know that often this analogy is used of like a crystal, that if you take a crystal, whatever you put it near, it takes on the color of that, right? And so our minds are kind of like that. It's you're the same you underneath it always, but that you is getting filtered through the mind, and the mind is full of impressions, and the mind is full of what impressions that take the form of attitudes, take the forms of fears, take the form of desires, all these different things. The real you is getting filtered through that. When you're in the association of the devotees, because they're relating to the real you that's underneath. Like, in other words, a lot of what yoga is, they say the word yoga means
Connection, union with the supreme.
Union.
The jiva connects with source.
Yeah, I would say union, right? It means it comes from the Sanskrit yuj. That's the root, right? Root's yuj,
Yes.
which the word yoga, bringing two things together. Soul is unchangeable. The soul is eternal. So it's the mind that's going to have to shift, right? To align itself with the nature of the self. Now, when we're and so that means we have qualities underneath. By nature, we love Krishna. By nature, we love everyone because everyone's connected to Krishna, and we act on that spontaneously and naturally. And when we're with the devotees, we're encouraged to act that way. It becomes easy to act that way because everyone's got the same. Everyone's centered around the same point, right? Everyone's centered around bhakti or devotion to Krishna. You just get right in the flow with it. You naturally flow with it. And you feel like that's my best self because that's the real self, right? That's actually the only self. When we associate with people that don't have those same values, then there's resistance, right? In the mind, there's resistance. And again, it manifests as attitudes, it manifests as fears, it manifests as desires and so many things. That the energy is the current is taking you in any number of potential directions. And then there's a tension between the mind and the self, or even a tension within the mind itself of like the values that you're adopting on one hand and the current that you're dealing with, socially on the other hand. Now there's a conflict, and that conflict, that tension creates a feeling of dis-ease. Or you could even say disease, right? Dis-ease, right? Like we say mental disease. Yeah. It creates a feeling of dis-ease. So that's so that's just a principle that exists in how the world works. We're not going to change that. It's how we're going to adapt to that. That and we may not be able to, to the second part of your question, one answer to that may be we run off to live in an ashram, but for one, maybe most people won't do that, and two, even if they do, most aren't going to do it for their whole lives. And so the idea is, when I'm with, if I can really value the association of the bhakti yogis when I'm with them, it transforms the mind, and your convictions become stronger, and your insights become deeper. And then when you go out into that other world, the bhakti becomes deeper, that when you're outside, away from that association, you don't feel like you're removed from that association is still there in the mind and the heart. So like Prabhupada, what was it that he said? That like, I think he said, there's never been a time where I haven't felt the presence of my guru in my life, right? Like I'm always feeling that. Or like I feel like I've never left Vrindavan. It's like the deeper that it goes, when you're in that association, the deeper your appreciation of it, the deeper the impressions go, and the more that you carry it with you wherever you go. And you can go with that other flow without becoming, you're insulated, not isolated, but insulated from it. That as you move through that world, it becomes natural for you to interpret all of your experience through that devotional lens, and begin to feel at home anywhere. Begin to feel like the best you is there wherever you are. But that's the practice that we're all doing. It's not easy, but it's noble and it's worthy.
That's a great answer, and these are like general ideas for all of us. Because I know you personally, I'm going to give you a specific answer. You don't have kids. You're sort of single-ish.
Moving to ashram right now.
Why not take 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months to say, you know what? I'm just going to invest in this part of my life. And then I always have that as a foundation for my life. Best thing I did when I was single, no kids and stuff like that. Some of us can't do it. Some of us can't leave our workplace. Some of us, right? You can. You're super flexible with what you do. So some of you might fit into that category. Like, why not? Why not go for 6 months? We'll help you figure out what to do. It'll change the trajectory of your next step for sure, and you'll always have that in your pocket. Anyway, that's what I think. Haribo? Yeah. Practical next steps. Yeah. Sell it all, and come north. Head north.
I wonder if there's a way that we can face the audience.
Yeah. There we go. Okay. Let's bring the next question on. Who's got it? Karina first. Okay. Karina from Scotland came to India with us. What year was that you came to India?
4 years ago.
4 years
Yeah.
ago. Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
Wait, where's your head?
Oh, yes. It's
Yes, yes.
Haribo. So my question is, it's quite easy when we're here with our spiritual family to follow the tenets like, I will not criticize, I'll be tolerant, I'll take no offense, I'm always ready to ask forgiveness for my offenses, and I'll find the good in this and others and let them know, and I'll be grateful and keep a tally of my blessings. But when we go back to everyday life and it's other people in our surroundings who's doing the gossiping, criticizing, pulling people down, how do we then redirect the conversation without offending them?
Good question.
It's the same question, but brought to like a further practicality.
I use that fireman analogy. Like the fireman has to save lives. That's their job. And sometimes they have to go in treacherous situations to save that life. But it's not like they're going into the burning house in their underwear. They have the coat, they have the boots, they have the hose, they have the axe, they have the helmet, they have the oxygen. So in the same way, we are more effective when we're prepared with our own protection, or else we get swept into that association. So you can go fishing, but not get wet. To use a fishing analogy, because we're all fishermen here. You go fishing, but you don't get wet. So you're strong in what you are. And then people appreciate that, and then they come to you. And when it comes to people who want to go there, who want to get into criticism, I put it on the wall. I won't go there with them. I won't dance that dance. And after a while, it feels awkward because they do. And if it's someone like I really know well, like say it's your mom or something, you go, Mom, I want to have a great conversation with you where let's do an experiment where we don't criticize anyone today. I'm trying because I find, and then I turn it on myself because it always sounds better. I find that I'm really sad and I really live in blame, and it makes me not feel good when I criticize people. So I'm doing this experiment where I just stop it, and it really helps. Can you help me with this? And when you put it on yourself, they don't feel as attacked or preached to. No one likes to be preached to. But when you say, look, I have these shortcomings, can you help me with this? I find that works better than trying to like shame somebody into changing. That never works. That's anything else with that?
I think that's a really good answer. I think that's one way, and the other way, I always use my wife. She worked at this Montessori school, and nobody knew exactly what she was into, right? Like they knew she was into some. She had these neck beads on. That was like some kind of clue. And she was a vegetarian. That was another clue. So they knew she's into her spiritual thing. Nobody quite knew what it was. She didn't talk about it, right? So the tendency, and I appreciate the question because it's kind of sensitive. Like some people might just think, well, just go and tell those people that they're wrong and the way that they're talking is wrong. And but she wouldn't talk about it. But she and the you think of Montessori school, like what could be a nicer
Right.
atmosphere to work and everything.
Nah,
But
nasty.
human tendency, particularly when the human is put under pressure. Right? He's not pressure in New York City. So you know what the tuition is?
Let me guess. $27,000.
No, not that
I'm sorry.
much.
Kaustubha,
it's
could
like-
you repeat what you
yeah.
just said? You're a little choppy.
Oh, yeah.
We lost
back
you
when-
after you were talking
where
about
did you lose me?
Montessori school.
I was saying that Montessori schools, we might think that, oh, what a pleasant, peaceful atmosphere to work in, But the fact is, I think the tuitions at that time, they may be as much as you're saying now, but they were like, I think they're like about $18,000 a year. You're paying for your kid to go to preschool, So like these are high-powered parents that are really concerned about the experience of their kids and paying a lot of money for it, and so they exert a lot of pressure. And then you have and that pressure is going right on the administration. So the administration is feeling pressure, and then so they're pressuring the teachers are feeling the pressure, and then the kids are creating pressure, and then the other teachers are creating pressure amongst themselves. So you got this triangle of administration, parents, and teachers. You throw the kids in the mix, and there's just like a lot of pressure, and pressure brings out the bad qualities even in good people,
Sure.
and so she didn't resent anyone. The point is, there was a lot of fighting going on. There's a lot of this talking behind. Everyone's criticizing each other, and
I didn't put it here so that you could start.
yeah, that's Karuna. You moved her? Okay. So she didn't resent people for it, but there was a lot of that backbiting. She just didn't participate, and that was unusual. Rare that someone doesn't validate that kind of talk. And again, not even necessarily by like confronting the person, but when you just kind of, we always say that Raghunath does this to us when we're off, right? Like,
Right.
just kind of
He doesn't respond to us. He just drifts off into space.
I've got absolutely no interest in the direction that you're going
You're
right
like, I
now.
was having a conversation with you. You stopped talking to me and looked into space, as if you're communing with angels.
Out of desperation because our association is like so repulsive. but it's, you know, I think in a very gentle way, but clear, people could see she doesn't conversations, and what it did was, without offending those people, they learned to, it reduced, you know, to a very large degree, that kind of talk in her atmosphere.
Like you're shepherding the conversation, practically speaking. You know, I want to add something that brings us back to Patrick's question. Where'd Patrick go? Anyway, Patrick's question, because he says, when I go home away from the association, I feel like this. Our home, we should design to be a sacred place. And if we have, you know, tons of kids or tons of situations where you can't because it's my own private thing, then you need a sacred space in that house. And a closet, perhaps. I had a sacred closet in here. But make your home a place where it's auspicious. Invite people over, have kirtan over, have a sacred altar, have sacred pictures or paintings on the wall. Because then when you go home, you'll feel, this is my shelter. Right? And you keep the negative behavior that's off track out of that sacred spot. You know? Okay, let's get another question. I hope that was okay, Karina G. Prabhu. Kim from Philadelphia.
Hi, good morning. Hi, how are you?
Good. Right into the camera.
Right in that camera.
So my question is, why is Krishna mischievous? And what is the lesson in that for devotees and people on the spiritual path?
Very esoteric question.
Esoteric. I'm going to let my esoteric friend answer that.
It's a beautiful question. Why is Krishna mischievous? Yeah, in other words, this is a very unique theology, right? It's as far as I've seen, I haven't seen any theology in all the world's faiths that goes into so much detail about God's personality. And here we find that you find God in the form of a boy in Krishna. And particularly when he's young, he's particularly mischievous. He's stealing sometimes.
Thief.
He's a thief.
Pathological liar.
Sometimes he lies. Why?
Many girlfriends.
He has many girlfriends. There's one principle you can take this with you. I learned it once many years ago, and I found this principle to be it works across the board. I guess that's what a principle does, right? Whenever we're wondering, when it comes to Krishna's leelas, Krishna's pastimes, and we're confused, we're wondering why, there's always one answer, and that is for the sake of the exchange of loving sentiments, right? In other words, why does Krishna steal? Because it creates a circumstance of his love for his mother is expressed, and his mother's love for him is expressed. Right? Krishna steals butter. We were just talking about this the other day, right? Krishna steals the butter. What he does is just crazy, right? It's like he really, his mother is breastfeeding him at the time, which he's enjoying, and then she's got something on the stove and it's boiling over. She's got to put him down and go and take care of it. He's like, what is this? You know, she's neglecting me. And then he starts to run through the house and create some trouble. He's breaking open the butter. He's eating it himself. And this isn't like, people need to understand, it's not like normal store-bought butter, right?
No, it's just hand-churned butter. It's not made with the Vitamix. It's just churned. It takes hours.
It's got a softness and a flavor to it that's like very different, a different color, a different flavor. It's sweet, and it's a whole different experience. So he could just eat this stuff straight, you know? And he's made a big mess, and he's got the monkeys there, and like in Vrindavan, the monkeys are like all over the place. They're running around, right? Hundreds of them.
Yeah, stealing your stuff.
they're always stealing themselves, and they're always eating, and they're always grabbing your bananas, and for real, they do that. And so Krishna's feeding the butter also to the monkeys. They're eating more. His mother finds him. Now he's cold busted, right? He's got like butter all over his hands. It's all over his face. It's all around him. How did she find him? She found these adorable little butter footprints, and she followed the path, right? So the whole thing is like this is, it's the esoteric side of bhakti that we're talking about, right? It's the kind of thing that it's not where you start to explain this to someone. This is like for people that are more deeply into it, understanding that all of these practices lead to a love for God that is not the love that we the kind of like relationship someone has with God that we see most commonly in across the world's spiritual traditions, which is usually a type of awe and reverence. God is great. God supports the entire universe. God is, the creator. And Krishna, the boy Krishna, who's the origin of all, he's not too interested in creation, in judging, in all. He's interested only in love, and in different varieties. And one of the loves that he relishes is the love of that he feels of being loved by a mother, motherly love. So when he steals his mother, she's like, part of what facilitates the intimacy of her love is that she thinks just like a mother thinks. She doesn't think he's God. She thinks it's my little boy, and I'm responsible for him. And look at the mischiefs he's causing. I have to do something. I have to correct this behavior. And then she's running after him. And although there's kind of like a motherly like kind of anxiety, but she looks down at those footprints the most she sees that in her heart. I guess for like a mother to see like the little footprints of the child is like moving.
It's not just that, but if anybody's had a child, when they get to that toddler age where they're when they're really babies, they're completely dependent, and then they get to that place where they can walk on their own, and it gives you a little bit of breathing room. At the same time, they can just disappear, and in that disappearing, famous one was my kid was missing. He just toddled away, and my wife was like, "I can't find Tarun anywhere," texting me, and he's in the toilet. He's just climbed in the toilet, and when like he knew he did something wrong. He knew he wasn't supposed to climb in the toilet, but kids do that. But in their naughtiness, it's always sort of charming, and it makes the parent fall deeper in love.
It's a blend of flavors.
Yeah.
So like her concern and maybe even like motherly anger becomes blended with a feeling of this feeling of how adorable this. So Krishna's into relishing and sharing with his devotees unique blends and flavors of love. So everything that he's doing is creating a setting for this to happen. So then when she finally arrives and he's busted, he denies it. How can he deny it? Right? That's adorable. That he would be so naive to think that he could get away with this. And then he starts to give then when he sees he's busted, there's no way around this. He says, "But actually, this butter was no good anyway. Look, even the monkeys aren't eating it anymore. But they're already full." And he's saying, even the monkeys don't eat it. That's adorable. All, why does Krishna dance on the snake Kalia? Why does Krishna, everything that he does behind every one of these leelas is it's just like a playwright or a screenwriter. Their art is to create circumstances in which emotions become heightened. And so in the same way, Krishna's leelas are playing out in the same way that, what they say to people when they're writing a screenplay? Is they say the first thing you have to do is something right at the beginning of the film. The protagonist has to do something that makes you feel a little bit of a connection with them, even if it's a very small thing that in your own mind and heart you say, "Oh, That's a good person. I identify with that person. I like that person. And then what you have to do is you have to give them problems.
Mm.
And then you know what you do? Then they need more problems.
Mm.
And then they need more problems, and then still more problems. And then they have to work their way out of those problems. And that's pretty much like how film scripts work. So that's what's happening in Krishna's Leela. There's problems, and then there's more problems. And then Krishna, and when those problems intensify, the emotions intensify, and the exchanges of love intensify. So when we get to the esoteric side of bhakti, it's really all about love. But in this tradition, what it's done is it's gone, the great teachers of bhakti yoga have gone through these ancient texts like Srimad Bhagavatam, and they analyze Krishna's leelas, and they explain what's happening. They explain that all of this is happening for the sake of the exchange of love in different flavors and different intensities. And the reason for that is because that is ultimately the only thing that God is interested in. Right? Not interested in judging, not interested in condemning, not interested, none of this. Which again is a unique theology that it gets to that point. So why is Krishna mischievous? Because it creates the circumstances in which love is intensified.
All right. Thank you. Good question. Seems like a simple question. Great answer. That's why they call this dialogue perfect questions, perfect answers. Huh? Okay. Who else is on deck? Who else is on deck for questions? Amy Steller, bring it in. Amy Steller from Jersey, she's here. Woohoo!
Hi, Krishna. So I'm new
How,
to.
how did you get here?
What do you mean?
How do we meet?
Um,
Devotion Yoga or Hudson
uh,
Yoga Project?
No, prior to that, Power Flow.
Power
Years
Flow.
ago, I did a flight school class, and then just taking
Come
workshops.
for the handstands.
Came from the handstands.
Stay for the kirtan.
Stay for the
What
kirtan.
did you think of when this guy blew through Power Flow Yoga? He was different, wasn't he?
He was different. I was also surprised that we did such a hard class in a hot studio. I was
Yeah,
surprised
sorry about that.
Yeah. But I loved it. I fell in love, and then I started. Random coworker had said, "Oh, I was getting a tattoo," and this yoga teacher was on Joe Rogan, and I swear it was one of those divine clairvoyant, and I said it was Raghunath.
You just knew it had to be.
I just knew. And she's like, that's bizarre. How would you know that? And then I had a picture with you and I showed it to her. And she said, that was him. How did you know that? And it was just, I knew.
We call that a Krishna miracle.
And then I started listening to the podcast, and, it all kind of went from there.
Welcome to Supersoul Farm.
Yeah. So my question is, I have been listening to the show on loop daily for the last 2 years.
Wow.
And I practice austerity of speech, and I try and instill that with my children. With that said, I don't feel worthy and comfortable of calling myself a devotee. Okay. And I want to know what I am, where I am, and, what to do, I guess.
Good question. Good question. All great devotees say, I'm not a devotee. Oh, true. No one walks around like, I'm a devotee.
Or if they do.
If they do, right.
Question.
They should question there. We should never think like but at the same time, we have this vision that everyone actually is a devotee. Now, sometimes we misplace our devotion, and sometimes we're devoted to some really bad things, right? But we're all actually parts and parcels of divinity, isn't it? We're like sparks from a greater flame. And in that sense, everybody, even the person that's driving you crazy, is actually a pure spirit soul. And that's how we look at the world. We don't look at them of us and them and enemies and friends. Everybody's actually a devotee, but some people are actively forgetting or they just forgot. And so all the entire yoga system is a process of remembering who I am. It's not a conversion. That doesn't work. Converting a person to join one religious club to another religious club. That's what not Sanatan Dharma is about. It's about remembering. We're spiritual beings, and I forgot. And so we do little things to assist us to remember. We hear on a regular basis about spiritual truth. We hear wisdom. We sing in kirtan that actually affects the jiva, the soul. It helps us remember. We hear these pastimes. We go to holy places, We start to see God in every living being. We start to be sensitive to other beings' pain. We start to be careful, right, about how we speak. We start to understand thoughts are actually things that affect us. The things I think of today create my thoughts tomorrow. So once we start putting that governor on of how I think, how I speak, how I behave, how I view the world, we are waking up what we've been forgetting, and we might have forgot it for lifetimes, maybe for many, many lifetimes. And when we start to become a little bit more conscious, we start to realize, I'm so far from where I should be, and that is a beautiful sentiment. It's actually a beautiful sentiment of a devotee. Kaustubha?
I think that was a very nice answer. And what you said reminded me of, I know that Srila Prabhupada once, a devotee wrote a poem glorifying Krishna, wherein they were expressing their own sentiments to Krishna. And they said, it's like a line in the poem was, dear Krishna, I am your devotee. And then Srila Prabhupada kind of like gently corrected and said, actually, we really don't refer to ourselves as devotees, but we say, I'm your servant, right? And I think that also that might have like, I think you're a devotee. If you're interested in hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, how could you not be a devotee if you want to hear Srimad Bhagavatam every day? If you want to associate with the devotees, those are devotional sentiments. I think maybe the part of the reason you feel that way, and I think a lot of it may be exactly what Raghunath's saying, it's just the natural humility of the devotee that feel that way. But also part of it is that one needs to find a service. Like, this is what I offer. And maybe in your life you're feeling like I have faith in this. This makes sense to me. I think it's beautiful. I love hearing about it. But I need something to offer, or maybe I need to understand what I'm doing as an offering. Maybe my offering is how I raise my children. Maybe my occupation, I need to see how I can tie that into my service to God. Maybe there's something special that I do that I've never done before that I can make my offering and my service. And when that becomes more clear, then within your heart, you'll identify more as Krishna's servant. You'll feel that more. So maybe we all just need to get together and figure out what's your special offering, and you'll feel more connected like that.
And by the way, just coming here, that is like a gesture of sacrifice, meaning I'm sacrificing the 4th of July weekend and coming to associate and be part of this whole thing. You sacrifice your time, your resources to be part of the collective group. That is also a type of surrender to Krishna in a way, there's a lot of things we do in this world to forget our spiritual reality. Matter of fact, that's what material life is. It's desperately trying to forget our identity. And every now and then we get like a wake-up call. So it was a very sweet question, and it's a sentiment that we sort of have because we realize, like, I've got so many shortcomings. That's Krishna also giving you that revelation of noticing our shortcomings. Suppose a person's addicted to alcohol and they are deep in the addiction. The last thing they're going to say is, I'm an alcoholic. They won't. They'll be like, I'm fine. This is great. Nothing's wrong with me. All their friends and loved ones and their boss, they're saying, you got a serious problem. But they're like, no, I don't. Right? So once you start seeing your shortcomings, that is the dawn of our overcoming our shortcomings. So it's beautiful. That's the process of self-realization. Yes. Bijan. Live from San Francisco, a San Franciscan other is here. Please welcome Bijan. Come on in.
Hi. Hi. Should I hold this? Cool, thanks. So I get this idea that we're all a spark of the divine, and that there's a divine order to things. I get that like abstractly, but then I try to think about like how do I actually live it, and like what does it actually mean when like every day, you know? And I could take a step forward and think like, okay, well, I have a soul and I can have a relationship with God. Then I have to like make my way through the world and deal with this mofo, not mofo, you know what I'm saying? Or all this stuff is happening and the mofo is actually Krishna mofoing me. You know what I mean? And so how do I actually accept that perfectness of it all and yeah, and give in that way? There you go.
Thank you. Good question. Good question. Want me to start?
Yeah, you said.
You know, a lot of where I'm at in my own devotional life, like, for the past couple of years, I feel like I'm at a certain stage of like there's something that I'm concentrating on, that I'm trying to develop or cultivate, and that is how I see the world. You know, in a specific way. It's like for years and years I've accepted, I've studied and experimented with and taught a certain philosophy about life, the philosophy that's taught in Bhagavad Gita, the philosophy that's taught in Bhagavatam. I have faith in it, but I realize that there's a difference. I've come to realize more clearly that there's a difference between knowing something, or let's say there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom, right? Like I feel that I know, I have faith in, I feel that that like the law of karma exists. So if something comes my way, I feel that I've done something to deserve it. And so therefore the rational response should be not to feel animosity towards the person that brought it my way, but to see it as something that's coming to me to help reshape me and help me learn the lessons in life that I'm supposed to learn. Like, I have faith that the world works that way. I have faith that I'm not this body, that this body is just it has no life of its own, that I'm a spark of life within this body that's animating the body. I have faith and I feel I know that I'm going to pass through, that I have passed through and I will pass through many bodies, right? And that I identify with them when I'm in them, and that that's illusory, and that there's a higher way to know things and so on. And I have faith and I feel I know that we are all like that every living being has this spiritual equality, and we're going through similar cycles of birth and death. I feel I know that. I have faith in that. But I don't feel that that faith has matured, or that knowledge has matured to the level of wisdom, which I think is what you're pointing at, which is so that when I move through the world, not only do I not respond in ways that are in conflict with that knowledge, or that are somehow not informed or shaped by that knowledge, but that I spontaneously see the world and see other people through that lens of knowledge. I don't even have to remind myself or correct myself. I just naturally feel and know, so that I'm naturally tolerant and naturally kind and spontaneously compassionate and all. That's where we want to get. And when we get there, then the mind becomes very peaceful. All of this stuff that keeps the mind engaged in resentment and fear and animosity and competition, in all of that. When all of that, when the knowledge has matured to wisdom, there's a relief, and the mind becomes very peaceful. And in that peaceful mind, we can finally deeply absorb it in the spiritual practices that we do, the chanting of the name, right? Then the mind becomes deeply absorbed, and when the mind's absorbed deeply, it transforms, and then we actually feel the love, which is our own nature underneath. So I get it, it's hard, but to me, this is my understanding, is that it's like there's different steps on the ladder, and the step from knowledge to wisdom, that's like a really big step, and I'm ready to dedicate decades of my life to try to get there, and hopefully I'm feeling it increasing as I'm in the midst of that step. But my confidence is that when I get there, then the rest of the ladder can be much easier, right? Because you're absorbed in all the. Right now, I'm doing those practices. I'm chanting and I'm studying and I'm, doing ritual and so on. But I know, because my mind isn't deeply enough absorbed, disturbed by so many things of this world, that I'm not receiving the full potency of it. But once, and so this step may be a long one to get there. But once we're there, that absorption is going to become. We'll have that absorb, and then all the transformation can come much more quickly, right? Just like we see different plants, they grow differently. One may stay underground for a very long time, and then once it comes up, it really starts to shoot up. So I now I'm at the point where I don't feel the frustration, or that's like a debilitating frustration from not being as wise as I wish I was. I just want to stay focused on cultivating that wisdom, on maturing that knowledge. And how do we do that? By reflecting on that knowledge as we go through the challenges in life, right? That as some people put us in positions that are uncomfortable or unjust or whatever, as we go through those challenges, rather than respond as the mind's been programmed to respond, which is inconsistent with the knowledge. We can reflect on this knowledge at any time, but at that point, it becomes really transformational to reflect on that knowledge and allow that reflection to begin to shape our own mind and shape our own behavior. And you do that once, and you're still the same person. And you do it 10 times, and you're still the same person. But after you've done it 100 times, you're a little bit different than you were before. And it's becoming a little bit more natural, a little bit more spontaneous. You've reprogrammed the wiring in your mind, not to respond like an ignorant materialist, but as an enlightened spiritualist. And it becomes one's natural way of, and on top of that, so that is a practical practice, right? It's a practice. I will reflect on this knowledge when, at all times, and particularly when needed. But also, what this path is teaching is that you also receive that by grace. In other words, we put in our effort, and even that mind, which is so hard to reprogram, if we're showing and praying and showing that this is what we want to be, then the grace of God can come and reprogram the mind for us too. And that especially happens through the association of others. So like, it's all the same kind of things that we talk about all the time, same practices and principles. But but we do have to focus more on something. Like, I find I have to focus on that reflection, make it an active part of my life. And then once you get there and become habituated with that, I think we find that it is a big part of that step. And you begin to let go of a lot of things. A lot of things so much better when I just let go. And that's a big step. And then the next time it's easier, and the next time it's easier. And like this, we transform.
Good answer. Good answer. That's good. I think we have time for one short one. Arna, who didn't go yet? Were you supposed to go? I thought you were supposed to go. No, you don't. Okay. Any other takers who didn't? They got a short, simple question. Vicky, was yours complicated? Or sure? Very complicated. She's like, yes, it was very, very complicated.
But I bet it's interesting. Follow up?
Follow up. Come on up.
You gotta come up.
Come up. Come on. Paris too.
Paris too.
Haribol Prabhus. So good to be here. Thank you. Hi, everyone on the internet. Okay, we feel you. So that was such a lovely question that Bij asked about how do we really live and apply. You said to reflect. So reflect really deeply on the knowledge that we're learning by studying the Shastra. And then to, when we're going through the challenge and it hits us, to be like, oh, this is where I have to like pick up the book or write down what I'm feeling, or just could you speak a little bit more about maybe some practical just ways that you would, or examples that you would give that were very helpful for you, or something to add to this?
Okay. Raghu, bring it to practical level.
Okay. Why don't you recap the whole question for everybody in a simple way?
Well, so the answer to the previous question was like we can transform and become detached and become happy and become deeply absorbed in spiritual practice through taking the knowledge that we have and reflecting on it as we go through life's challenges, and naturally develop detachment, and naturally we develop a peaceful mind.
What are those practices?
Can you explain how you might do that in your own life, what it looks like in your own life, like that, you know, how it plays out?
Yeah, like you're trying to make a decision.
You find your kid sitting in the toilet.
You know, what to do with that? As Kaustubha was saying, or as you were saying, like reflection, journaling is huge. Speaking with like-minded friends. It's good to have friends that lift you up. A friend isn't someone I just commiserate the miserable existence, that miserable thing, drama that I'm going through. And they're like, yeah, you are going through. Yeah, they are jerks. That's not a friend. A friend lifts you higher, right? We need people in our life, and we just trust the way they move in this world. I like Kaustubha in my life. If I got a problem, he's my friend. I call him up. What do you think about this? I'm going through this. I'm at a fork right now. What do you think about this? Here's what I think. Is that based on illusion, or do I have is that a good instinct I'm feeling? I never fully trust my instincts. People always say, oh, just follow your instinct, follow your instinct. No. Are you kidding? My instincts want to do a lot of crazy things. My instinct, like, flips off the person who cut me off. That's my instinct. There's a deeper, we have to make sure our instinct is not covered with anxiety, fear, lust. We can our what we call instinct can be just a very base reaction. So we have a process where we check in with other people that we trust. I feel this. What do you think about this? Sometimes it's just my ego is hurt, so I think I should react this way. So I want to check in with other people. And generally, I have a few friends that I'll consult, and they'll say, we agree with you, or we completely disagree with you. And it's good to have counsel. It's good to have good counsel, good consultation with that. So that's one way. But I do think just going off in the woods and just going for a walk and chanting and reflecting and talking things out in my own mind helps a lot. And then the answers also do come, but even those answers, I still like to check in with teachers or good friends.
In the same vein, it has so much to do with who you associate with. And like I've found in my own life that there are certain bhakti yogis that I have tremendous respect for. And their example in my own life, actually, I just cannot overstate how important it is. I know that without their example, my mind would be engaged in all kind of petty things that I would never be able to let go of. But when I see their life and I see their example and I see how they were, you see, because our tendency is that some little thing happens, like you say, you get cut off. That in the larger scheme of things, that's entirely meaningless. It's so tiny and insignificant. It's just, we can't state how insignificant it is, but we blow it up into something that's significant. We make mountains out of molehills. Somebody said this to me. And then we play that over again in the loop in our mind, and we respond in ways that are not helpful. We say something hurtful to them. Now we've compromised a relationship that might have been important, or we've created an issue in our workplace or whatever. I have certain people in my life that I know that my problems and what I go through is insignificant compared to what they go through. But I see that the way that they respond to it. And what it does is, so whenever I find myself in my mind rationalizing, justifying some less than enlightened response because of the nature of the circumstance or the scope of the circumstance, I realize, hold it, this is nothing. This is nothing compared to what I know this example in my life, this mentor in my life has tolerated, has transcended, has transformed a negative circumstance into a positive circumstance. I have no excuse. There's no rationalization for me not to rise up and take my level, to take my behavior and my response to the bhakti yoga level. And that, so it's that example. And also within that, there's a little bit of a feeling of like embarrassment in myself to stand before that person, having not conquered, this kind of pettiness. And so I don't know how I would stand a chance to elevate from knowledge to wisdom without those examples. So we need to seek out those people and etiquette, which means I'm going to show them a certain level of respect, and their role in my life is going to have a certain sacredness to me, right? That I will always feel and carry with me, and so that when I'm associating with them, I'm taking that really seriously, and molding myself, my thoughts and my behavior to fit into that association, because that's what I want. I want to compromise in that sense. I want to not compromise. I want to conform in that sense. I want to take my mind and conform it to that higher level. And those examples and those mentors or those shining lights in life are really essential for that.
All right. I think that's all we have time for today. I want to thank everybody for joining us here. I want to thank everybody live today. Say Harry Bowl. Oh. Oh no. Vegan trucker just pulled in. Where is he? Sorry it was choppy today. We had some internet issues. We're excited for Genevieve Harrison, who's showing up soon. And Paramananda's come. We're going to do our shelter acoustic reunion. Excited for that. We just decided we're doing it yesterday. We're excited for Indian street food and a vegan barbecue today, Harry Ball. And most of all, we're just excited for good association and upcycling the 4th of July. Declaring our dependence on Lord Krishna and our independence from our mind and our senses. Woo!